Over 10,000 people claim they've seen Bigfoot. 10,000. And after all that, we have zero bones, zero verified DNA, and zero hair samples. So today, I'm breaking down the biggest cryptid mysteries and everything we actually know about them, starting with the big guy himself, Bigfoot. The term Bigfoot didn't even exist until 1958. A bulldozer operator named Jerry Crew found 16-inch footprints near Bluff Creek, California. A local journalist ran the story, and the name just stuck. Marketing really is everything. But the real reason we're still talking about this creature is the Patterson-Gimlin film. October 20th, 1967. Roughly 60 seconds of 16mm footage showing a large, bipedal, hair-covered creature walking along a creek bed in Northern California. That film has been analyzed for over 50 years. Nobody has conclusively proven it's fake. The creature's gait, visible muscle movement, and stride length don't match anything a person in a 1960s gorilla suit could replicate, which is, a problem if you're trying to debunk it. Here's the thing though, 10,000 sightings spanning decades, and not a single skeleton, not one tooth. Every other large primate on Earth leaves behind remains. Bigfoot apparently doesn't. But if a lack of proof hasn't stopped Bigfoot believers, wait until you hear about a monster hiding in a lake with even less evidence and a famous photograph that turned out to be a toy submarine. The Loch Ness Monster. The most famous cryptid photograph in history is a toy submarine with a sculpted head glued to it, and somehow that didn't kill the legend. On May 2nd, 1933, the Inverness Courier published a report about a couple who claimed to have seen a massive creature in Loch Ness, and the modern obsession kicked off from there. A year later, Robert Kenneth Wilson took the surgeon's photo, and that single image defined Nessie for 60 years. It was on posters, documentaries, lunchboxes, everything. Then in 1994, it was confirmed as a hoax, a little toy submarine with a model head attached, which is, not ideal for credibility. But here's the thing. Between the 1930s and 1960s, multiple credible witnesses, including clergy members and actual scientists, reported sightings. This was before widespread media saturation, before viral cycles could manufacture a frenzy. These people had zero incentive to lie. Sonar surveys in the early 1970s detected large moving objects deep in the loch. Skeptics blamed thermal layers in the water causing false readings. Fair enough. But then came the real nail in the coffin. In 2019, researchers conducted environmental DNA sampling of the entire loch. Over 1,000 reported sightings across nearly 90 years, and the eDNA returned absolutely nothing. No unknown large vertebrate. Not even a hint. Everyone still loves Nessie, though. I don't know what to tell you. But if a toy submarine fooled the world for 6 decades, wait until you hear what a single blurry photograph did to an entire mountain range. The Yeti. Reinhold Messner is one of the greatest mountaineers who ever lived. First person to climb all 14 8,000-meter peaks. First to solo Everest without supplemental oxygen. This man has spent more time above 14,000 feet than most people spend in traffic. And in 1986, he reported seeing a Yeti. That's the kind of witness you can't just wave away. This isn't some tourist who got dizzy on a day hike. Messner knows what a bear looks like. He knows what altitude hallucinations feel like. And he still said he saw something he couldn't explain. But here's where it falls apart. Edmund Hillary launched a full expedition in 1960 specifically to find Yeti evidence. He came back with nothing. His conclusion? Misidentified bears. Then there's the Pengbocha hand, supposedly a real Yeti hand kept in a monastery for decades. When fragments were finally DNA tested, turns out it was human remains. And every single hair sample tested from the 2000s and 10s onward, everyone's supposedly Yeti fur came back as bear DNA. Himalayan brown bear, Tibetan blue bear, always bear. But here's the thing. Sherpa communities have documented this creature in oral traditions for centuries, long before any Western climber showed up looking for headlines. Dismissing that entirely feels like a different kind of blindness. The physical evidence says bear, the cultural record says something else, and one of the greatest climbers in history is standing right in the middle, shrugging. Speaking of creatures with zero physical evidence and maximum cultural staying power, let's talk about something that allegedly drains livestock of all their blood: the Kraken. Every other entry on this list is about something we can't prove exists. This one's different. This one's about something we couldn't prove existed until we did. Sailors had been reporting enormous tentacled creatures dragging ships into the abyss since the 13th century. Norwegian and Icelandic texts described sea monsters so massive they were mistaken for islands. In 1752, Bishop Eric Pontoppidan published what he considered a serious scientific account of a creature with arms stretching to terrifying lengths. The scientific community's response was basically, cool story, Bishop. Maybe lay off the communion wine. Turns out the sailors were right the entire time. Giant squid, Architeuthis ducks, were considered pure mythology until preserved specimens started washing ashore. The largest one ever recorded measured around 43 feet long and weighed nearly a ton. That's a real animal. That existed while we were busy fighting world wars. But here's the part that genuinely blows my mind. The first living giant squid wasn't filmed in its deep ocean habitat until 2012. We mapped the human genome before we got footage of this thing in the wild. It dodged visual confirmation for centuries, not because it was fake, but because the ocean is that incomprehensibly massive. That's like living in a house for 800 years, and only just now finding out there's a second basement. Some researchers think even larger species might be lurking in unexplored deep ocean zones, which means the Kraken might not just be real, it might be small compared to what's actually down there. And speaking of creatures that refuse to show themselves, the next one terrorized an entire island before anyone could figure out what it was: the chupacabra. In August 1995, a farmer in Canovanas, Puerto Rico, walked outside to find 8 of his sheep dead, drained, puncture wounds, no blood left. Within months, over 150 livestock killings were reported across the island, and eyewitnesses described something that sounded like it crawled out of a sci-fi movie. Reptilian skin, no hair, spines running down its back, massive eyes. Basically, if an alien and a kangaroo had a baby, and that baby hated goats. The legend spread faster than any animal could run. Puerto Rico to Mexico to Texas to the entire American Southwest. In under a few years, news stations ran with it. Communities panicked. Farmers started sleeping next to their livestock with shotguns. The chupacabra was real, it was hungry, and it was coming for your animals. Here's the thing though, every single specimen captured in the American Southwest and Mexico, every one that locals swore was the real deal, tested as coyotes, or wild dogs. Specifically, coyotes and wild dogs suffering from sarcoptic mange, which is a parasitic skin disease that causes total hair loss, cracked gray skin, and a generally nightmarish appearance. So the most feared cryptid in Latin America was just sick dogs. That's it. Sick dogs that looked weird because they had a parasite. The original 1995 wave, almost certainly normal predation by known animals, amplified by cultural panic and media desperate for content. One farmer finds dead sheep, the story gets picked up, suddenly every dead chicken in a 500-mile radius is chupacabra evidence. You almost have to respect how perfectly the fear pipeline worked. But if media-fueled panic can create a monster out of mangy coyotes, wait until you hear what an entire town hallucinated for a solid week straight. The Mothman. Here's the thing about the Mothman. The creature itself isn't what makes this story terrifying. It's the timeline. November 15th, 1966. Point Pleasant, West Virginia. 2 young couples driving near an old munitions plant spot a figure standing near the road. 7 feet tall, massive wings folded behind it, and 2 glowing red eyes staring directly at them. They floor it. The thing follows their car, keeping pace at over 100 miles per hour. That was the first widely reported sighting. It was not the last. Over the next 13 months, more than 100 people in this tiny town reported seeing the exact same creature, a 7-foot humanoid with a massive wingspan and piercing red eyes, not scattered across a state, not spread over decades, one small town over and over again for just over a year. Then on December 15th, 1967, the Silver Bridge connecting Point Pleasant to Ohio collapsed during rush hour. 46 people died, and the Mothman sightings essentially stopped. That's the part that keeps people up at night, not the glowing eyes, not the wingspan. The fact that this thing showed up, terrorized a community for 13 months, 46 people died, and then the reports just dried up, like its job was done. Now, skeptics will point to barred owls. They can have wingspans over 4 feet, their eyes glow red in headlights, and they absolutely could be mistaken for something monstrous at night. Perfectly reasonable. But it doesn't explain why every oversized bird in Point Pleasant apparently packed up and left the moment 46 people fell into the Ohio River. Whether the Mothman was a harbinger, a coincidence, or a town full of people misidentifying wildlife, that sequence of events is genuinely chilling. And it's about to get weirder because at least the Mothman had the decency to leave. The next one on this list has been lurking for almost 300 years. The Jersey Devil. Most cryptids sound like undiscovered animals, a big ape, a lakefish, a weird bird. The Jersey Devil sounds like an actual demon. Bipedal, winged, hooves, forked tail. That's not a missing link. That's a medieval painting of Satan. And this thing has been terrorizing New Jersey since 1735, making it one of the oldest cryptid legends in America. But the real story isn't the origin. It's what happened in January 1909. From January 16th to the 23rd, thousands of people reported seeing the Jersey Devil across the Delaware Valley. Thousands of sightings in 7 days. Schools closed. Workers refused to leave leave their homes. Armed posses organized and marched into the Pine Barrens looking for a winged demon. Hundreds of witnesses, all at the same time, across multiple towns in New Jersey and Pennsylvania, describing the exact same creature, and they found absolutely nothing. Zero physical evidence. Some tracks were reported in the snow, but none held up to serious scrutiny. No hair, no droppings, no claw marks. An entire region ground to a halt over something that left less physical evidence than a stray cat. Armed groups combed the woods and came back with nothing but sore feet, presumably some embarrassment. Here's the thing, if even 1% of those sightings were real, there should have been something, a feather, a footprint, literally anything. But there wasn't, which makes the 1909 panic maybe the single best case study in mass hysteria on this entire list. One person sees something weird, tells their neighbor, and within a week, the whole region is shooting at shadows. Modern sightings still trickle in every year or so. Over a century later, still zero evidence improvement, but at least the Jersey Devil only causes panic. The next entry on this list might have caused an actual catastrophe. The Thunderbird. Here's a fun math problem for you. The California condor is the largest flying bird in North America, maxing out at a 9.5-foot wingspan. That's enormous. Now, in the summer of 1977, multiple witnesses across Illinois independently reported a black bird with a wingspan of 10 to 15 feet. That's significantly larger than anything that should exist on this continent. And these weren't vague. I saw something big reports. On July 25th, 1977, in Lawndale, Illinois, two large birds reportedly swooped down, and one of them briefly grabbed a 10-year-old boy named Marlon Lowe before dropping him. Multiple witnesses saw it happen. That's weirdly specific for a hallucination. But here's the thing, this isn't even a modern invention. Native American oral traditions document massive bird entities across dozens of tribes spanning centuries. We're not talking about one culture's campfire story. This is a continent-wide tradition that predates European contact by a very long time. So either every tribe independently invented the same giant bird, or they were all looking at something real. Now for the counterpoint, and it's a brutal one, a bird with a 15-foot wingspan is not a subtle animal. It's not hiding in a cave somewhere. It's flying in the open sky where people have cameras, planes, and satellites. And in all of recorded history, nobody has ever produced a clear photograph, a skeleton, a feather, or a single piece of biological evidence. Zero. So you're left with two options. Either multiple unconnected people across Illinois all saw the same ordinary bird and exaggerated by the exact same impossible amount, or something was up there and somehow left absolutely no trace. Neither answer is satisfying, which is honestly what makes this one so hard to let go of. But if a mystery bird with no evidence sounds frustrating, wait until you hear about the cryptid that would literally rewrite evolutionary biology if it were real. Mokula mbembe. Every other cryptid on this list would be a cool discovery, a new primate, an undocumented bird, maybe a surviving megafauna species. Mokula mbembe wouldn't just be cool. It would rewrite the entire history of life on Earth. Because what we're talking about here is a living dinosaur, specifically a sauropod. Long neck, long tail, roughly the size of an elephant, allegedly swimming through the rivers of the Congo Basin like the last 66 million years. Just didn't happen. Central African folklore has described this thing for centuries, and local communities report sightings with striking consistency, which is either the greatest zoological secret on the planet or a very persistent legend. Roy McCall, a University of Chicago biologist, led dedicated expeditions into the Congo in 1980 and 1981 specifically to find this creature. He searched the exact regions where sightings were most concentrated. He found nothing. Zero physical evidence. No bones, no tracks, no biological samples. But maybe the technology just wasn't there yet. Fair enough. Researchers have since conducted environmental DNA sampling in waterways within Mokula mbembe's reported habitat. eDNA can detect traces of any animal living in a water system, even from skin cells and waste. No unknown large species have turned up. Nothing. Here's the thing. It would need a continuous breeding population. That population would need a food chain. That food chain would leave evidence, fossils, environmental disruption, something. And the Congo Basin, while remote, is not unexplored. Decades of searching has produced exactly zero. The Congo's remoteness gives believers just enough room to keep arguing. But at a certain point, we haven't looked hard enough stops being a defense and starts being a cope. But if a living dinosaur sounds like a tough sell, wait until you hear about a cryptid that shouldn't exist for completely different reasons. The Yowie. We started this video with Bigfoot, so it's only fitting we end with his Australian cousin. The Yowie is a 7 to 9 foot bipedal ape reported across eastern Australia for centuries, and on paper, it might be the most compelling cryptid on this entire list. Aboriginal traditions documented the creature long before Europeans ever set foot on the continent. They called them Doolagals, Jurawara, depending on the region. Then European settlers arrived in the late 1700s and independently reported the exact same thing. Two completely separate cultures, zero contact between them, describing the same giant ape-like creature in the same wilderness. That's genuinely hard to dismiss. And the numbers back it up. Over 1,500 documented sightings since the 1800s, concentrated in the Blue Mountains and Queensland Highlands. By raw report count, the Yowie is one of the most seen cryptids on Earth. But here's the problem, and it's a big one. Australia has no known surviving native primates. A 7-foot ape-like creature roaming modern Australia is like finding a polar bear in the Sahara. It's not just unlikely, it contradicts basically everything we know about the continent's evolutionary history. And then there's the timing. That massive spike in sightings during the 1970s and 1980s, it lines up almost perfectly with global Bigfoot media saturation. The more people heard about Bigfoot, the more Australians started seeing their own version. Despite over 1,000 reports, there are 0 skeletal remains, 0 verified DNA, 0 hair samples that check out, 0 clear footage. Maybe cryptid sightings don't tell us what's hiding in the wilderness. Maybe they tell us what's hiding in ourselves. The ancient, stubborn need to believe that something bigger and stranger than us is still out there, watching from the tree line. And honestly, I hope we never fully stop looking. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.